Good morning, everyone. It's January the 7th, 2025. And as you can see from the title, I'm on December the 31st. They came out with a year-end roundup of what I've been talking about over the last year on the homeless. And this is an article in the paper here. So I'm going to read this and as a summary, and I think it's a good summary, and I want everyone to hear this. And it's titled, Nowhere Else to Go. Homeless, sleeping in chairs at overcrowded shelters. People in Ottawa who are experiencing homelessness have resorted to sleeping in plastic chairs at shelters in hopes of finding a warm place to stay for the night, according to the Ottawa Mission. There are approximately 2,952 homeless people in Ottawa, according to this year's point in time countdown done by the city. This year's count was done from October 23rd, 2024 to October 24th, 24. This is a 13% increase from the 2021 count of 2,612 people experiencing homelessness, which was the last time they completed the count. The PIT count is a national effort to gather information about homelessness in Canada. Volunteers fan out across the city over a 24-hour period to count as precisely as they can the number of people living on the street and the areas they congregate. The City of Ottawa said the full report will be available in February 2025. The Shepherds of Good Hope experiences overflow and overcapacity issues as the season gets colder. Bernie Forstell, Senior Manager of Communications, said, "The shelter will let people sleep in the lobby to get out of the cold if necessary," he said. "It's not the norm, but it does happen," Forstell said. We know the cold is very dangerous. When the shelter gets to capacity, Forstell said that they place mats down on the floor to ensure people can still have a place to sleep. "We will bring mats in and put people where we can, but that's not the ideal situation," Forstell says. He says that shelters in Ottawa keep in contact with each other to transfer people if needed and to ensure they have shelter for the night. Aline Leo, Director of Communications at the Ottawa Mission, said they continue to fight high demand for shelter spaces. When individuals come seeking shelter, Leo said, they choose to wait days in the Mission's lounge on plastic chairs in case a bed opens up. "We have people sleeping on chairs in our lounge," Leo said. "There's nowhere else for them to go." The shelter houses 246 beds, including in-treatment beds and sleeping mats laid on the chapel floor. In April 2024, the Ottawa Mission released its annual report that highlighted epidemic levels of food insecurity and homelessness. The report said it served more than 1 million meals between 2022 and 2023, the same number as Ottawa's population. Leo said cities need support from provincial and federal governments to help combat homelessness. These problems are the result of decades of policy decisions that have placed more people in jeopardy of being homeless, being found insecure. Leo said she is supportive of the city's sprung shelters and turning recreation centers into dorms to house asylum seekers, but explains that these are temporary measures alongside people sleeping in shelter lounges. "We need far more supportive housing and affordable housing," Leo said. Rideau Rockcliffe Councillor Ralston King said investing in transitional and temporary housing, including the sprung structures, will elevate some Rideau Rockcliffe Councillor Ralston King said investigating in transitional and temporary housing, including the sprung shelters, will alleviate some pressures and get people back on their feet. King said their challenges are not being properly supported by senior levels of government. "The challenge for any municipality government is that we have a lot of the challenges and we don't have a lot of resources," King said. King said City Council has been responding with additional investment to address homelessness through approaches like transitional housing and other social services. While this is a positive step forward, King said many more investments were vital to address the crisis. In the final budget for 2025, the city announced more than $48.5 million to support the shelter system and housing assistance programs. The city needs those supports to ensure that people who are here, who have decided to make Ottawa home, have proper support, King said. So this was just an update, and this a lot of what I had said over the last few months on the homelessness. And of course, right now, I'm really worried because of the political situation on both sides of the border between the States and Canada, and we're coming up with an election, a federal election, and what I've always seen, and when a new government comes in, we can do it better, and then they just totally scrap everything that's in place for what the previous government has put in, and a lot of funding is put aside for the homelessness on the past Liberal government. And I'm afraid that if the Conservatives do get in, they're going to scrap it like they've done before. I've mentioned this briefly. Why do I prefer Liberals? Because my parents always voted Liberal. I turned around many, many years ago. This is decades ago, and every time the Conservative government gets in, they always scrap everything. Well, when the Harper government got in before the Liberal government just got in this last round of government that we've had, what did they scrap? Well, they scrapped because of our national defense, and I'm going right into national defense because this is something that the states have been complaining about, is that we have aging ships and aging planes and whatnot here, and it has taken the Liberal government, actually, since the Liberal government has been in place, we've got, well, they had the Liberal government in before, Conservatives scrapped whatever they had planned, and they had everything in place to go purchase what they needed. But since the past Liberal government's been in, we've got a couple of updated ice breakers for the Northwest Passage, because that's a big concern with NORAD and everything. So we've been trying to do our share that way. We've got a couple of new submarines that I understand have come into place as well. We've got naval ships that have come into place as well. The last being just before Christmas, they launched the newest one, and a much longer ship than we've ever had on our Navy before, as well as they've been trying to get new planes in place for the Army. So despite what everybody says, I'm thankful that we've got some new ships, and this has been a long time coming, and being my age, I've seen so much over the different decades, and I know it's confusing for the young people, and I know I get a lot of young people on my channel talking in the ages of 25 to 34, and they're really trying to confuse you, the government right now. And I'm not afraid to say this on the air, but I was confused even at that age. I once voted for the Conservatives even, and I was very sorry for it. And then I realized that it was what the generations before me had told me was even best. And don't forget, when we're talking about the Indigenous people, who put the residential schools in position? Sir John A. Macdonald, our first Prime Minister, who was Conservative. So there's a lot of things to think about. And right now, we're in a delicate balance. And this is what everyone's, and a lot of us seniors are talking about, because we've seen what has happened over the years, where these rich people, like just as an example, and I will tell you, back in the 90s, we were worried that this was going to happen, that the rich were going to come in, and at that time it was the Rockefeller family that we were being warned about. That all these people who are rich, they have money, they don't care about the lower class, they only care about themselves, money and power. We're seeing that between the states, we're seeing that coming in Canada right now. So we have to be very, very careful where we place our votes. And it's very important that every single person votes. Well, and it doesn't matter, I can't tell you go out and who to vote for, but I can tell you what I've experienced in my lifetime. And this is where we've lost that connection of the intergenerational thing between the where the grandparents would be sometimes often living with the parents, not in old age homes, but it would be what they talked about that we would learn from them, and we would learn from our parents. But oftentimes when our parents couldn't answer questions, it would be the older generation. So I grew up in a generation where I was grateful for what the older generation shared with me on World War I, World War II, the depression, all these things came in handy when I grew up and realized that, boy, what a lot of responsibilities. And then I've got, now that I'm an adult and I'm 18 and I can vote. And then learning, well, there was only a handful of women that went and fought for us to vote, for the women to be able to have the vote. And we need to step forward and do what's right and not go backwards, because with abortion rights and everything being rejected now, are we going to go back to where we were previous? In previous years, for all that we fought for. So I can't tell you who to vote for. I just say I know where I stand as a senior, and I stand for my country. And I love Canada. Canada's my country. I also love the States. I've got relatives in the States. We've got friends in the States. And we've always had a great relationship. And that had to take the War of 1812 to do it, I think. But we literally have a great relationship. And it was great. So I can go on about a lot of other things, but I just wanted to tell everyone today, please think before you act. That was always one thing that my parents and my grandparents always said. Think before you act. Don't act on emotions. Don't act on impulse. And that's what these people today in power are trying to do, is make everybody act on your emotions and not thinking of what you're doing. So please, please, I beg you, stop. Do your homework. Make sure you know what you're talking about, because I'll be talking about some of this as the elections and stuff go forward. Well, the election's over in the States, but as our upcoming election's going to be, because the last few days have been just total turmoil. So I'm going to leave it there for today, everyone. But think before you act. Don't act on your emotions. Act on what's up here. Think before you act, please. Take care, everyone. Have a beautiful day. Be safe and watch your surroundings, and we'll talk to you again soon. And bye-bye.